Why do careers collapse when players sign with the Raiders? It's not just bad luck, it's a trend that haunted the franchise for decades. The Raiders are a storied franchise known for their legendary figures like Al Davis and their historic runs in the 70s. But since then, something's gone terribly wrong. And today we ask, why do so many players seem to fall off the face of the earth when they play for the Raiders? It's almost like a Bermuda Triangle of the NFL where careers go to disappear. Let's turn back the clock. The 1970s were the glory days for the Raiders. Under the visionary guidance of Al Davis, they won 3 Super Bowls. But after Davis's passing in 2011, instability crept in. Consistency is key in the NFL, and the Raiders haven't had much of it. Poor draft decisions, free agency flops, and a questionable leadership dynamic have left this team in chaos. Off-field controversies haven't helped either. Remember the tuck rule game? That's just scratching the surface. Let's look at some notable players. First up is Randy Moss, one of the greatest receivers of all time. In 2005, Moss joined the Raiders, but his time in Oakland was far from legendary. Injuries and a lack of chemistry with the team's struggling offense left Moss in a shell of his former self. In just one season with the Raiders, he only managed 553 yards and 3 touchdowns, far from his usual dominant numbers. But then everything changed. Fast forward to 2007. When Moss was traded to the New England Patriots. It didn't take long for him to return to his former self, breaking records and reminding everybody why he's considered one of the greatest. That season, he caught a career-high 23 touchdowns, helping the Patriots go undefeated in the regular season. The right environment can make all the difference. Moss proved that with a fresh start, leaving behind the struggles in Oakland and regaining his place among the NFL's elite. And then there's Antonio Brown. Oh boy. Who went from NFL superstar to a total disaster with the Raiders. His brief stint in Oakland was filled with drama, from frostbitten feet to helmet grievances and a showdown with the GM. In 2019, Brown was traded to the Raiders, but this went downhill fast. He missed practice due to foot injuries, then refused to wear a certified helmet, and to top it all off, he threatened to retire. After a heated confrontation with the GM over missed practices and fines,
receiver is facing a suspension after his tiff with the Raiders general manager.
Brown's behavior led to over $215,000 in fines and voiding of nearly $30 million in guaranteed money. Just days later, Brown demanded his release and the Raiders let him go. Within hours, he signed with the Patriots with a $15 million contract, making it one of the fastest transitions in NFL history. But he was shortly released from there too. But it begs the question, was this AB saga just a strange initiation into the Raiders' chaotic world? Now let's not forget about Jamarcus Russel, a name synonymous with draft bust. Selected first overall in 2007, Russel failed to deliver and went from star in college to an unproductive starter, leading to his departure in 2010 after a measly 7-18 record. Despite being the #1 overall pick in 2007,
with the first pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Oakland Raiders select quarterback Jamarcus Russel, LSU.
His accuracy was a major issue, with a completion percentage of just 52%, and this is well below the league's average. He only managed 4,000 passing yards and just 131 yards a game, which is far below what you expect from an NFL starting quarterback, let alone a #1 overall draft pick. He only threw 18 touchdowns in his 31 games, followed by his 23 interceptions, which highlighted his poor decision-making and inability to lead an NFL offense. Russell's most infamous moments included showing up to training camp overweight, his inability to grasp the playbook, and poor mechanics that contributed to his inconsistent play. His career officially ended after just 3 seasons, making him one of the biggest draft busts in NFL history. Despite his physical talent, he couldn't translate it into success at the professional level. Now, we got Amari Cooper. He had his highs with the Raiders, don't get me wrong. During his time in Oakland, Cooper showed flashes, but his production was inconsistent. His final 2 years with the Raiders were lackluster. One of those seasons, he had only 680 yards in 14 games and 280 yards in his final season where he was traded mid-season. After being traded, he racked up 725 yards and 6 touchdowns in only 9 games with the Cowboys. From there, Cooper became a key Pro Bowl caliber receiver for Dallas, showing that sometimes a change of scenery can bring out the best in a player, especially if you're leaving the Raiders. Finally, we have Carson Palmer. After some successful years in Cincinnati, he came to the Raiders but couldn't deliver the same magic. Carson Palmer's stint with the Oakland Raiders was a case of unmet expectations. After some years of solid play with the Bengals, Palmer was traded to the Raiders in 2011 for a pair of draft picks, and one of them was a first-rounder. The trade was a desperate move by a franchise looking for stability at the quarterback position. He stepped in midway through the season and started 8 games, throwing for 2,753 yards. However, he was far from his former self. He threw only 13 touchdowns, which also came with 16 interceptions. In 2012, Palmer started 15 games, but things barely improved. He threw for 4,000 yards, but only 22 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. His completion percentage was 61%. His passer rating finished at a mediocre 83.2. Palmer wasn't the quarterback the Raiders had hoped for. The team's offense lacked balance, and Palmer often struggled with consistency in key moments. He wasn't the savior many expected, and by the time 2013 came around, he was traded to the Arizona Cardinals, which ended his short and mediocre run with Oakland. Despite the individual statistics, Palmer's time with the Raiders exposed a larger issue. He never seemed to mesh with the team's chaotic environment, and he struggled to find a rhythm in an inconsistent offense and the lack of stability at the coaching position. So why does this keep happening? We have to analyze the factors contributing to this Raiders curse. First, coaching stability has been rampant. Turnover rates among head coaches are alarmingly high. The NFL average is about 2 to 3 years per coach, but the Raiders haven't seen that consistency. Second, let's talk about the management decisions. Poor draft picks like Russel and decisions in free agency that seem more for show than substance. Since 2010, the Raiders hold a win-loss record of 83 and 136, including several seasons with double-digit losses. Third, and the lack of a stable football culture has been another factor. A team like the Steelers thrive because of a winning mindset that runs through every level of the organization. But the Raiders have just been plagued by off-field distractions and a revolving door of players and staff. That makes it hard to build trust, chemistry, and consistency. Let's not forget the challenges of relocation. The Raiders' move to Las Vegas may have brought them a shiny new stadium, but it's hard to ignore the identity crisis that comes with leaving Oakland twice. This instability only adds to the perception that the Raiders lack a solid foundation. So why do we call the Raiders the Bermuda Triangle of the NFL? Like the infamous triangle, careers seem to disappear when players enter the Raiders' orbit. The franchise's chaotic history, poor management, and the terrible culture combine to create an environment where talent struggles to thrive. It's not just superstition, it's a pattern backed by years of evidence. The Raiders lure in some of the biggest names in football, only for them to vanish from relevance. It's a metaphorical black hole of wasted potential. So is there any hope for the Raiders? Unfortunately, that hope seems to be slipping away every single season. After the departure of key figures like Josh Jacobs, who was a consistent force in their backfield, and Devontae Adams, who was recently traded to the Jets, the Raiders are losing their stars at a time where they need them the most. With Adams leaving and Jacobs no longer in the picture, the franchise has lost 2 of their brightest stars, and even Derek Carr, the face of the franchise for nearly a decade, was forced out. His departure showing just how much the instability has affected the team. Right now, the Raiders are in the midst of a rebuild, and it's been that way for a while. But with the lack of leadership, the revolving door of coaches, and key players leaving for other teams, it's hard to see how they can break this curse. They still seem to find themselves in a position where careers come and go, but rarely reach their peak. The Raiders are facing tough questions, and it remains to be seen if they can ever recover from the cycle of dysfunction. Until then, the silver and black might remain the NFL's Bermuda Triangle, where careers too often go to die. So what do you think? Are the Raiders cursed, or are they simply a team stuck in a cycle of bad decisions? Will the 2025 draft get them in the right direction? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the NFL's biggest mysteries.